Yeah. Okay. Did you guys get the notification that the recording is in progress?
Yes.
All right, we're all good to go. Microphone checked.
You seem to be excited about that notification.
I'm just excited, Auntie. I'm just excited about this topic. This is very important. I know we recorded our very first episode last week, so yay! Congratulations, ladies. So we're moving on up. Today we will be talking about immigration struggles and all the challenges that we encounter in this country. So immigrating into the US is not always like a straightforward journey, right? So many immigrants face legal obstacles that make it difficult to gain permanent residency. There's so many other issues that we face as immigrants in this country, especially African immigrants, but we're not just discriminating, it's all immigrants. So many of us have these systemic issues, their personal challenges that, shape our ability to thrive. Today, we're going to dive deep into these challenges, right? We're going to talk about some of the struggles, including mental health, because we're all mental health professionals here. So our topic is really to discuss and talk about how we can deal with these challenges, because those challenges are always going to be there, like it or not. But learning how to cope with them is what's going to make the difference. Okay. So ladies, let me ask you guys, who will I even start with? So Josie, I'll say from your perspective, what are some of the most common immigration challenges faced by most immigrants, and specifically African immigrants?
Thank you, Martha. There are a lot of challenges. I don't even know where to begin. The challenge of, first of all, just relocation, particularly to a region or part of the world that you are not accustomed to, is a different culture, struggling to assimilate culturally and embrace the cultural shock that comes with it, as well as depending on your socioeconomic background when you left your original country of birth to immigrate, say, to the US, because this is where we are. So we use it as the example. Immigrating from your country of birth to the US, comparing socioeconomic standard of living from back home and now here, that can be a challenge for a lot of people. Most times people think they're moving to greener pastures, but the green pastures may be here. They're just not waiting for you when you get here. You have to walk through them and figure yourself out and find a way to realize the greener pasture that you were seeking for. Right? So that's one of the challenges. Now, when it comes to African immigrants, depending on what part of Africa you're immigrating from, the number one challenge could be your language. Or even if you were an English-speaking African, your accent can be a challenge. I remember when I moved here, and I bet you my English is a lot better. Well, I don't think my English is a lot better. My accent is a little bit different from when I first got here, but my English has always been good. I remember going at my local church. One day we were having a conversation and the pastor walked up to me and said, "Oh, you speak good English." And I was so innocent and ignorant about discrimination and I don't know, stereotyping. I was so ignorant about, no, I was naive. And I said, "Did you expect me to speak bad English?" That's what I asked him. I'm like, "Did you expect me to speak bad English? I can read and write. I should be able to speak good English." He was taken aback, like, okay, I said that to the wrong person. But that's one challenge. I went to a grocery store. I don't remember, it probably was Walmart. And I was looking for something. I had to spell it out for the person to be able to help me. So those are some challenges that come with immigration. On top of that is navigating the immigration system to stay legal in the country where you find yourself. Because it's not always easy. For some people came with an immigration status, and so they had their guaranteed immigration status when they got here. Some people came with a term visa, which they may try to adjust their status during that time. That's a challenge. And a lot of people may not always know how to navigate that. And that can be challenging and cause mental health or emotional distress, I should say. Because finding yourself in a new place, yeah, you may know some people, but even the people you meet don't know everything about what needs to be known to get get what you need because they probably got here a different way than you did, and their experience is limited to what they went through, and not considering things that may have changed from the time they came in to now that you just came in. So there are a lot of challenges. I could go on and on and on, but these are some challenges that, like, if you just got here a week ago, you're already facing these challenges. And depression is part of that mix.
Yeah.
Grief is part of that mix because you are grieving something that you left behind. It could be loved ones. It could be a business that you got rid of to come here. It could be, anything you hold dear. I remember vividly when my husband first moved here. I kid you not, those were the most challenging 11 months. I used to know the timeline to the date. It was 11 months, 28 days, and some hours. It was the most excruciating period of my life. So not only was he in distress, I was also in distress back home, right? Is he going to make it? And he's like, am I going to be able to join him? Are we going to be able to have the papers to allow us to stay even when I got over here? So it's a challenge, and I'll share more as time goes on. I just want to give the opportunity for you all to chime in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for that. Yes, those challenges are just enormous. There are other ones like professional and financial challenges that we go through. As you mentioned, language and communication barriers, there are cultural adaptation and identity struggles that we all face, healthcare disparities, mental health stigma, there's racial discrimination, social inequality, family dynamics, relationship and marital challenges, just to name a few.
Hey. Let me share. I was just gonna
piggyback on what Josie said, because I one of the most important.
Antoinette, sorry, I was actually coming to you next. So when I was opening, I'm gonna call your name because I had a question for you, but piggyback on that, and then
I want to piggyback on what Josie said. To that your question, because that question is it's an umbrella question. Right. We can go anywhere we want with that question. That question has so many facets.
So many
that we can touch. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from, which part of Africa you come from. I don't care if you're the child of a president or a minister. There's one common denominator, one common challenge that every African immigrant face when they travel overseas, especially when they travel over to the United States, and that is accent-based discrimination. We all come here with an accent. I don't care how much money you come with in your suitcase. That is one discrimination that you start facing from the time you walk out of that plane, through that plane door into the airport. You start facing that off the bat. So you're already facing that. That is already an X on you, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, regardless of all your fanciness or riches or poverty or whichever corner you're coming from in Africa. You're already facing that off the bat. So you're carrying that weight with you. And then you're coming into a culture that is already overwhelmed with systemic discrimination. So you're already coming in, you're already landing with an accent, with a baggage.
Right.
You're already landing with a baggage. You haven't even unpacked. You haven't even arrived at your location or apartment, whoever is picking you up. You're already coming with a baggage. That alone takes a mental toll on regardless of, I don't care who you are. And then you start struggling with that before you even start facing the systemic discrimination. My first job was at a fast food restaurant. I don't want to call the name of the restaurant before I start facing lawsuits yet. But I remember, because I could speak English, they put me at the register. And oh boy, there were customers who would come in and, can you repeat that again? Could you repeat that again? I got tired of repeating my questions to them.
Yes.
And I was speaking plain English. Plain English. So I don't care who you are. That problem is a number one challenge, the number one problem that we all face as soon as you get on that plane coming this way. So I just wanted to throw that in before we move on.
Yeah. When it comes to the accent, that can be like a whole discussion topic.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, because for the most part, it seemed like when you're talking, they're trying to pick up the accent rather than listening to what you're saying. Because I've had to tell people most of the time, even some of my patients that I talk to, and they're listening and said, "Oh, well, you have such a strong accent." I said, "Oh, I do." I said, "But well, can you just read my lips?" I said, "Because I think I'm speaking clearly and plainly. Do you have a hard time understanding me?" And they said, "No, I can understand you. You just have a strong accent." I said, "Well, I'm sorry. I just have an accent based on where I come from." So those are some of the things that people they pick up on rather than listening to what you're saying. They're trying to judge the words that are coming out of your mouth. So that whole topic is really a very interesting one. Then I don't know if you have anything to share when it comes to the accent part, because even like Josie had mentioned, like right now, we have to try to talk in a certain way just so people can understand you.
Polish it up a little bit.
Exactly. So
And
sometimes you get lost in translation because you even pronounce the word. You're like, okay, is that the way it's pronounced? You know, because like we say pronunciation, there's a pronunciation, whatever way it's pronounced, you're trying to pronounce it to the best of your ability because that's the tongue that you have been taught with. And it's hard to even change that tongue for the most part. We try as much as we can, but it will still come out because you were born in another country, you've learned this language, you've spoken this language for so many years that it becomes difficult. So Diana, I'll give you the opportunity to share your viewpoint on this.
Yeah, specifically on the accent as we were talking about. So you're dealing with having to speak a certain way so that they should understand you. And then there's also the shock of even understanding what they're saying.
That's a big part.
I feel sorry for like
that part.
the French-speaking Africans who come here, and I mean, and we weren't really exposed to English. I can just imagine what they're dealing with. But even as an English-speaking African, you come here, and I feel like the American tongue is they speak fast. So even when I came here, I spoke English, but I struggled to understand what they were saying. Like I came here younger, and in class, I failed my first. I say fail, but do you really call it fail? I entered like the last week of the semester, but we had an exam. I had no idea what my teacher was saying for the last week. She was speaking English, and I had no idea what she was saying. So
That
you
is a big
struggle
one.
with your accent, you struggle with even understanding what they're saying, and so much struggle, and that clearly can't help your mental health.
Yeah, that is a really good point, Diana, because just piggybacking on what you just said, when I came here, I had already graduated college back home, and I was still going to school, so I had to, get an entrance into the school, which I didn't even know, because I got here the next day, I had to be in class. So I went to school, and they gave me an SAT, and I was like, well, back home, we don't take SATs. We have other exams, but it was not the SAT. And I went right into class. It's okay, you're good to go. You're taking this exam. So I started writing, and then I thought I heard the proctor said it was 30 minutes left. I was like, did she say 30 minutes? I had to ask her again. I said, did you say 30 minutes left? She said, yeah. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know the exam was so timed because the SATs are timed. And I had not even gone halfway. So I was scrambling, trying to finish. And guess what? I flunked so bad. And they put me in developmental classes.
Oh my goodness.
They put me in developmental classes in college.
You started with ES
Right,
classes.
Yes.
You started with
Exactly.
ES01, ES02,
Exactly. I was like, I didn't even know when they even said developmental classes, like I didn't even know what it was. And then I went in these classes, they're teaching me English, like what? And I was like, this is stuff that I took years ago. Like I don't know why am I here? And
Martha,
Martha, it goes back to our community, right? And it goes back to, I was going to talk about that. It goes back to reaching out for help and reaching out to your support system, because you could have retaken that exam.
Right. You could have challenged it. Yeah.
You could have retaken that exam if you had the right information, or if you had shared this with someone who was aware. They would have recommended you to go retake that exam and get placed where you deserve to be placed. I
ended up just having to clap out of it because there was that option. Because my instructors too, they were like, I mean, there wasn't one question that I wasn't getting right. And I just told them, I said, I can't be in this class. Like I was already feeling depressed. I was ready to go back home. And, my sisters had been here, but they did not take the SAT. I guess that's something they had started at that time to get into nursing school. You had to take the SATs. So they didn't know because I came back and said, well, they didn't know that they were going to give me that test. But I clapped out of it eventually. But that's just
So
to say, like, this goes a long way.
right. So
Mhm.
imagine how many other African immigrants might have experienced what you experienced.
Yeah.
Imagine
Yeah.
how many. I remember there were a ton who had to take the English placement exam and didn't quite understood the directives. Like you went in there and they placed them in the bottom, and you got to pay for those classes, even though those classes are not credited.
As international student, I cannot
As
imagine.
international student, you got to pay the out-of-state tuition rate, the international rate.
Yeah, my
And those are some
tuition
of the
was $4,000, $4,000 per
Exactly.
semester, and they
So-
would not allow me to work. You know, I had a student visa, I could not work.
So it goes
Yeah.
now to tell you, those are the challenges that we're talking about. If a young student or a young person comes from Africa and they go through that experience, they got to pay the international rate tuition. One class is what, $2,000, $3,000, and they cannot work at the same time because they are limited, they are restricted. How are they going to afford that? Even if they're getting support from back home.
Yeah.
How much is $4,000 in CFA, in Naira, I mean, how much is that? So you have a lot of African immigrants who come over here with a desire to pursue their college education, but with some of this restriction, and the innocent, the ignorant that is accompany that, they end up just putting education by the wayside.
Yeah.
And just trying, they're just trying for survivor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just nailed it. You nailed it. That's my story. That's my story, because
the
right now I'm still...
The sad part is that you go to these colleges and they have guidance or counselors, whatever they call them. They will counsel you into taking the wrong courses. I remember my personal experience. I would literally go to this counselor because it's required, but I'll go and do something totally different. I know I wanted to get into the nursing program. So I go to all the schools around online to their portal and go through their program and look for what their syllabus required and take those classes. I don't do nothing my counselor tells me, because a lot of those courses don't transfer. A lot of them are not counted towards your graduation credits, and they just make you take random courses for no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
With regards to accent, I'll tell you this. I was in a class for my nursing program. It's in a class of about 60, and it was about 5 Africans, female Africans in that class. No, 3 African female and 1 male. One of the other African person was called out by the instructor and told to go on Google and type words and hit the sound button so that she could learn how to pronounce them.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't just only, she ended up dropping out of, not that she was failing, but it was so depressing and demoralizing that she couldn't continue. She had to drop out after the first semester of nursing school. And this was a private school costing us about $650 per credit hour. So just imagine that, taking all that loan to pay tuition for first semester of school and then dropping out, and you still have to pay back because of a teacher. I told her, I was like, if I were you, I'll stick it to her. I do not take stuff like that.
Yeah.
When she told me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
She can think that, but don't say it to my face. No.
Well, the thing is, it goes again to
as a correction or in a supportive way.
In a supportive way.
Yeah, right. She said it in a ridiculous way, for lack of a better word.
It was demeaning. That is demeaning. That is very humiliating. And in a situation like that, you go to HR. You go to HR and report that
when you're new to this country, Auntie, you don't know all those things. You don't know who to go to. You just want to focus. I remember one time a mental health teacher called me aside and said, I didn't expect you to get this grade. I'm like, were you expecting me to fail? I pay so much.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And just like you were saying, they probably
nursing school class.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with it.
Yeah.
But because I was doing so well, she was surprised. She was like, Josie, you're doing so well in this class. I didn't expect you to. I'm like, I hear you fail people, but I'm not going to fail. I've never failed a class. I'm not going to fail this one. I came to this school to graduate, and I will graduate.
Yeah.
So Josie, do you know what I say to that? When I hear someone say, do you know what I say to that? What I say to that is, and that's what I say to most people, have that support system. Surround yourself with a group of people that you can openly share and know that when you talk to them, whatever feedback they're giving you is coming from an honest place. So when you go to school and you encounter such a person, you reach out to that support system. One person will come up with something that will guide you on how to handle a situation like that. Because that kind of a person, all they're trying to do is intimidate you.
Yes, Auntie. But
Yeah.
that
That's
also
what
leads
they're
to
trying to
another
do.
challenge.
They're
Yeah.
trying
That
to
also
do
leads to
that.
another challenge.
Yeah,
That
that's what
is
they
the challenge for you, Auntie. If I had come to you and told you this, you would have probably guided me in the right path. But would I
exactly.
have had the courage to do what you said, even though I knew it was true? Would I have had the courage to do that?
That's where
As
I
a
come
young
in as a
immigrant who's
that's
just
when I
trying to
come in as a
graduate
coach.
nursing school.
That's when
Yeah.
I come in as a coach. My job is to coach you to this is the thing. We all have that esteem. When we find ourselves in situations where we feel like we don't have control, we crumble.
Mhm.
And when we crumble, whoever is standing over us, see us crumbling, they take advantage over that and they do
Mhm.
whatever they want to do with us.
Mhm.
Coming from Africa, coming from a country where hierarchy, respect, we were taught not to look at people in the eyes. When you're talking to somebody, you don't look at them in the eye because that's disrespectful.
Exactly.
Mhm.
In the society we live in right now, if you don't do that, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
we are already coming short. We are already coming intimidated. We
Yeah.
cannot talk to our supervisors. We cannot express ourselves or express what we think because we are scared. All this is
Fear of
rooted in us.
retaliation.
All this is rooted in us based on our backgrounds. So we need to unlearn. We need to start allowing ourselves to unlearn, to build up our self-confidence, to build up our esteem, to know when someone is trying to take advantage of us and stand for ourselves. We need to protect ourselves in situations like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were saying, when these things happen, especially in school with international students, when you lose that opportunity to go to school, guess what? You fall out of status.
That's
And
right.
once you fall out of status, you become illegal. So you have to go back to immigration to try to get a legal status again. And that leads on us now to the immigration and legal barriers that we have. Because someone like me, I literally had to fall off because I could not register on time. The $4,000 I was mentioning for my tuition, it had to be paid before classes start. And you know how there are deadlines. If you do not meet that, if you miss that deadline, that's it. I went in to register, try to put the money together. It was 2 days past registration, and you know what? They turned me down. They turned me down. So at that time, so I'm like, what do I need to do? Oh, you have to go back to immigration. But really, that's something that the school probably would have handled. But I don't even think that they know or they knew how to handle this. But those are some of those challenges. And then we come here now, we face these difficulties just obtaining that legal immigration status, because without the legal status, you cannot even get any kind of loan to go to school. You know, you cannot work. We have doctors who come here, they're Uber drivers, you know, a lot of challenges. And then I know you face some challenges of your own too. If you do want to share some of those challenges, please do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could talk for
We can
days.
barely hear you, Diana.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was saying how I could talk for days, and I know all of us with our own experiences. I always make a joke that if you came here with your green card, you have no idea.
You have no idea,
Yeah,
Diana. I second that.
yeah,
Yes.
you really have no
We call
idea.
it the red carpet over here.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's the right
Yes.
topic.
absolutely.
Yes. You
Right
better
topic
be
is the
quiet.
right word.
Yeah, I mean the struggle is really is real, you know, as the slang goes. I think I shared this last time, but I came here when I was much younger, so I really had no idea. I had no papers. I was illegal, and I was just a happy-go kid, just happy to go to school and all that. And so I later on found out when I was in high school, because I now realized that I wouldn't be able to go to college because now, when you're in college now, you have to have a social security and all that. And so I dealt with so much. I didn't even know where to start. I know I had lovely aunties who tried to adopt me, but the process is also so grueling that, I mean, they literally make it hell. So even it's not like your family doesn't want to help, but it's sometimes they don't have the resources, they don't have the money.
Yeah.
It was just so much. And you know, you have other people who you know have filed for asylum, and the process is complicated. I know I had a coworker who told me that he had been in this country for 30 years, and he had filed for asylum, and they kept being glitches in his paperwork. And so he was just, it was like he was frozen in time. He just couldn't do anything. And he just had to find his way. He had a hustling spirit. Thank God for that. So he was able to find his way and manage. But 30 years later, he had no no papers to show that he's legal in this country. And that's, I think
so
that's an
sad.
experience for a lot of people. Sometimes people, oh, you're illegal and all these things, that they don't know that nobody wishes to be illegal. Everybody would want to do it the right way, but the system, it's not like it's so favorable. You know, they make these things hard. It's expensive. It's complicated. If you don't have a lawyer, like you have a mountain of obstacles to, you know, to navigate. And so I just have to say, like, the immigrant, and I know we're focusing on the African, but the immigrant who comes here, be for whatever reason and wasn't lucky to get their papers or be having to be legal on time, the struggle that they face is enormous. And as we're talking about mental health, that takes a huge toll on your mental health.
Yeah.
And like I said last time, I personally dealt with that. So something I would not wish on anybody. I'm like, I wish I
no.
could come here with
Yeah.
green card,
Yeah.
and so you can enjoy America and not have to deal with the depression that comes with it being illegal. Yeah.
I mean, and you see, people become illegal. They came to this country legally, but
Legal.
because
Yeah.
there is no
Yeah.
way to obtain your documents legally, you become illegal. And now they're being treated as criminals. They're literally called criminals.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you look at this history of this country, immigrants are very hardworking. This country is built on immigrants. A lot of immigrants work really hard because we know where we come from. And because the opportunities here, we tend to work really hard. But you also see other people feel like immigrants probably get things easy, because I've been told by some of my American friends that when we come here, we get it easy, we get loans. Because I was able to start a business, they say, oh, they just give you a loan and you're able to do these
Some
things.
of them don't
Exactly.
even know what a visa is.
Well,
Right. I'm like, no, I went through a lot. Even when I started my business, I was still at that time illegal because I had a social security number. But guess what? I couldn't really go to school at that time. So I became an entrepreneur by force. And that's why you see a lot of immigrants, they're entrepreneurs, because those are the things that they can control, right? You don't have to go ask for employment from somebody and maybe ask to do some low wage job. You know, somebody, I have one of your friend's dad, actually, Dan, who came here, he was a director back home. And when he went to look for a job at a gas station, he thought he was going to be the director. And then they told him he had to clean the toilets. And he was like, me clean the toilets. They're like,
Yeah.
well, he said, I used to be a director back home. And they said, what is a director? So, oh, the direction that you're going to be doing is directing these toilets.
Yeah.
You know, so, the degrees are nothing. You come here with these degrees, they're not respected, you know, and we have to work so hard. A lot of times when they're putting out these things, talking about illegal immigrants, they're not talking about what immigrants have actually done in this country. They're not putting it out there. Because, you know, I just found out the other day, the founder of Yahoo, you know, he was an immigrant. Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
The founder of Yahoo is an immigrant. Even Bill Gates came from an immigrant family. But because those people, they call out this
an immigrant.
I was just going to say,
right?
I was just going to say,
there are very few indigents in this country. Almost everyone that is still alive is an immigrant.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how you want to tell the story. I wanted to acknowledge some of our guests on TikTok. Thank you all so much. Coach Elanel joined us earlier. I really wanted us to have this conversation together. She came up in the box, but I think she had to drop down for some reason.
I think I see her. She's a life coach.
Yeah, Elanel, life coach. I wanted her to come up and contribute, but if I see her again, I will bring her up so she can call. So she can contribute, because she's a friend that I've met through TikTok Live, and she's a life coach.
So I was gonna piggyback to what you said, Martha, about one of your colleagues saying that you know things are easy for you. You got a loan, you're starting a business. There is discrimination even in issuing that loan. I know of someone, an immigrant, who was gonna start a business. Credit superb. Their credit is superb. Went to a bank. And the bank, the person working on their folder just sat on it, taking their time, giving them a merry-go-round, taking their time. For months and months, they kept calling, going back. Oh, we need this, they provided. Oh, we need this, they provided. One day he went to that bank, and on his way out, one of the other employees at the bank followed him and said, I'm so sorry that, you know, you have to go, you know, you're going through this back and forth. I understand you've been calling to check in on your loan and all whatnot. We have white guys who come in with their credit scores that are way lower than yours. Within weeks, they get approved. I'm sorry that you got to go through this. So we might get those loans, but those loans are coming with conditions. Sometimes interest rates are high, skyrocketing
it's not sometimes, it's every time.
So you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to that. So those are some of the subtle discrimination that we face, that we might overlook, right? Okay, we're getting the loan, we get excited and forget about everything else. But they're so subtle. Those so subtle things that we ignore. Now, when we talk about, the accent, somebody say, oh, I hear an accent. Where are you from? There are two ways to know. When someone is curious, there's a tone. There's a way they ask that question. They ask it with a tone of curiosity. When someone is arrogant, when they want to make you feel belittled or small or you don't belong here, there's a way they ask it. There's a way they frame that question. Oh, I hear an accent. Where are you from?
Or reframing the same word.
The same word, but different.
Like you heard the word,
correct.
but you wanted me to say it in certain,
the same question, but different presentation. So we got to be careful about that, because I've heard people say, oh, this person is asking me about my accent. They're so rude. I say, well, how did they present it? There's a curiosity. That person is just loving the accent and they want to find out where you're from and they want to know more about your country. And then there's someone who is disgusted that you're in America and they don't want you to be there. So we got to pay attention, with the presentation of that question and how it is approached.
Oh, and let me make a correction. I think I was actually talking about Steve Jobs. I made a mistake and said Bill Gates. I meant Steve Jobs because he's on the Apple that everybody loves. So that's what I meant to talk about. But yeah, so these challenges, we can just go on and on and on. Our stories need to be told, and we do want for people to listen, to tune in and contribute. If you're an immigrant, you're a descendant, you're an ally, please join in and listen to these stories, because if they're not told to you, you will not know, Yeah. So they're here. And even like I was saying, this person saying that they gave me a loan. I actually didn't even have a loan for my business, because as I applied, they turned it down. Like you're saying, it's just so many factors that go into that. So by the time you even approach that bank, you're like, they're going to give it to me, but you keep struggling, you're hustling day and night. And most of us are here. We go through so many of these challenges. We end up overworking ourselves. We can't even spend time with our families. I have a lot of patients who come in and they're just burnt out. They're burnt out. They say, okay, this is the American dream that we were chasing, right? So America has put itself out there as this superpower. We see it on TikTok. We see it and it's beautiful and everybody wants to come here. But the fact about it is some of us didn't come here. We still would have been okay back home. Because for one, when I graduated college, I had a job. But then it's the American dream, right? It's like, oh my gosh, everybody wants to go to America. I see everybody looking good. And at that time, when anybody said anything like, oh no, I'm going to America, until you get here, you're like, the first few weeks I was so depressed and I was like, I just need to go back. Like, what is this? I'm going to school. I was literally living with my sister in an apartment and we had one car. She was in school. She was working part-time. She would go drop me in school and I literally had to sit in school and wait until she got off work to come pick me up from school. That's how bad it was. And we're living in an apartment with other people, about 4 or 5 of us in like a 2-bedroom, So these are struggles that we go through. And then when we come off successful, other people are looking at it like we had it easy, but never.
They never stand to ask you the process you went through. I remember when my husband picked me up from the airport and we got to the airport, I was like, I was so disappointed. We were not the wealthiest people back home, but this is what came out of my mouth. I asked him, I said, you left your father's house for this? Because his father's house was much better off. Although we didn't live in his father's house back home, like you left your father's compound for this.
This
America, we should probably go back to the other. I was referring to Washington, like the city that I transited from. We need to go back there because this is not America. You know.
So I'm listening to the both of you, and I'm cracking up here because the reverse is true, right? The reverse is true. When we are back in the third world country, this doesn't only apply to African countries, even to South American countries. They are flocking in here because they're third world countries, they're struggling as well. When we're back home there, we're watching media, we watch movies, we watch all this on TV, you want to come to America, regardless of what your situation is back home, right?
Right.
So they sell this story to us. And the people that are out here, our own people who are out here, are not helping either.
They're not.
When they send photos,
They're
when
not
social
telling you the
media,
reality.
Yeah.
social media, they give all the misinformation. The young girl and boy who are out there, maybe struggling at the university, they're seeing all these photos and they want to come over, and you is trying to tell them, listen, settle in, get a job, live your life. They're looking at you as if you're weak, you're selfish. You don't want them to travel.
Right.
Because what? They're seeing what social media is portraying to them, and to them, they want to come see for themselves. And the reverse is true, because Americans, a ton of them, the majority of Americans think Africa is a jungle.
Thank you.
That's why I say the reverse is true. They think Africa is a jungle. I'll tell you guys, my first class, when I was in college, my first class, I had this class, and we're doing introduction, when the teacher comes in and everyone is introducing themselves, where they're from and whatnot. So I got up and I introduced myself, say I'm from Cameroon. I was born in Cameroon, I'm from Cameroon. And I remember when we had like a 15-minute break during that class, one of my classmates, didn't know him from Adam, that was the first day of class of that particular class, came to me and said, oh my goodness, you might be excited being out here in the States. I bet. The jungles and animals. And I look at this kid and I said, if only you know how disappointed I am.
I know, right?
And that was my response to him. I said, if only you know how disappointed I am. And that's all I said to him. And he just walked away. So it's all about what the media is feeding. It's all about what we are putting out there. A ton of Americans. Yeah. They feel like that's why some of them speak to us the way they do, because they think that we're in heaven.
One of them asked me if we have houses. If we have, they feel
like we're living in heaven.
Yeah, they asked if we have houses. So I told one of them, I said, actually, we sleep on trees. I sleep with a snake every night. The snake is on that side. I'm on this side on this tree. And this goes back. You see a lot of. I think I've been watching a lot of social media. And there was this video that this girl put out. I was actually going to try to play that here, but it I don't know. Maybe when we edit it, we can put some clips in there. But she was just saying that, they're saying to go back to Africa. So I've never been to Africa, and I'm not going back to Africa. I'm not even vacationing in Africa. It's not even a place that I even wish to ever have to vacation. And I was like, look at the ignorance, and that's
good for her.
That's from my African American, sister. And I said, it is our place to educate, because I think a lot of these people are not educated. If they go to Africa, they will see that it's different from what is put out in the media. For the most part, when you see things that's in the media, it's some nonprofit that's trying to get money for people to go donate in Africa. So they're looking at all these kids who are walking out, they're naked, they're hungry. But no, we are not hungry. I mean, we do we look hungry?
And Martha, you look so proud saying that. That crown on.
Yeah,
we're not hungry.
And that's the thing.
Sometimes too, a lot of it could be people just not wanting to learn, because in this day and age, if someone can make an assumption about any part of the world, make an assumption that we sleep on trees and in the jungle in Africa, when you can just Google it, and see the difference, or ask Google a question and get responses. Although most of them are not 100% accurate, but it gives you an idea. Or go watch some videos of people who have actually been there and are sharing their experience, versus just assuming something that you saw on TV in 1970.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people are just that ignorant. They don't want to learn.
They don't want to learn. And really, now there's no excuse, right? I mean, there's social media, we have access, you have phones. I mean, there's just no excuse. I mean, back then, when I came here, I could honestly understand, they only knew what was presented to them. Nobody had access to, like, you couldn't get your phone and just go on Google, and the computer, you had the startup computers and stuff. And so when kids would ask me questions like, oh, do you know Tarzan, or you sleep on trees, or African booty scratcher, and all those things, like, I mean, I honestly just laugh, because I knew that they honestly, that's all they knew, right? I'll never forget my first experience. The first time I came to school, it was during gym class, and so they had to introduce me to the students. So they brought me into the gymnasium, and the teacher was like, "Hey, everybody, we have a new student, and she's from Africa." And literally
my
the
God.
all the students, they ran towards me and they were touching me like I was some foreign entity, like an alien. And they kept, oh my God.
Wow.
And so it's like they didn't even know what to expect. Maybe they were expecting a monkey. I don't know what they were expecting, but
Wow,
it was so
Diana.
traumatizing to me, because imagine I'm coming from where I
Yeah.
barely see any white people, and now I'm surrounded by white people touching me, like, oh my gosh, I'm African, they're touching me. But then it was okay. Like these kids didn't know. They only see what they're they show them, which is the Africans who were wearing like the leaves around their private areas
Oh
and
my
the
God.
jungle. So that's what they were expecting me to look like. But nowadays, there's no excuse why somebody
I'm
should still
so
ask that
sorry.
question. Do you have houses? Do you have a car? Like, why are you asking me these questions in this day and age when you can just Google it? So now I'm not as forgiving now to those who ask ignorant questions as I was back then, because there truly was an excuse for them, and whereas now there's not.
Yeah, and
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
glad that some people are becoming enlightened. Especially African Americans, a lot of them are going back home now. They're, buying land, they're building houses. So kudos to my brothers who are doing that. I will encourage everyone to do that. Most of the Caucasians or the white, well, back home, anybody who came there who was light skinned, we call them white because we didn't know whether they were Caucasian, they were Mexican, or wherever they were
brown
from.
skin, yellow skin,
Yes,
in
we
between
just call them
skin.
white. So a lot of them come there and they don't leave because they're like, oh my God, you come there, you're able to, you get so much bang for your buck. You're able to, you can buy a big house, you can afford to have a nanny, you can get your driver. You can get all of those
The
things.
climate, don't forget the climate.
The weather,
Don't forget the climate.
Yeah. So they're like, this is a life. Here in America, we work. We are all here, very hardworking women. We still have to come home, take care of our kids. We have to cook. We have to clean. It's so much. My sister came here a few years ago, and I felt so bad for her. I could not even get her on the phone because before coming here, she had like 2 nannies. She had people living with her. By the time she got here, and it's just so much on her. She has to be the same person to cook. She has to take the kids to school. She's still trying to get used to the system. So it's like, oh my God, is that how it is over here? But again, it was forced immigration. She was forced because that's the difference now between our countries, third world countries, and the United States. Because here in the United States, there are laws. The United States, there's peace, but more so peace than back in those other countries where we have all these brainwashed leaders who are there not doing anything.
There's no peace of mind here, though.
Yeah. Well, there is no peace of mind. That's what we don't have. But at least that peace there, that you can sleep and get up. You may know that you're going to get up. Except
that depends on where you live.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. But for the most part, we have like tribal wars, some of those things which force people. Because I'm just going to say most people don't really come here because they really want to. Some people do, but some people are forced.
Yes. Some people is voluntary. It's voluntary. Right. Some people is those of us who pack our bags and pack everything and say we're going away to look for greener pastures.
Yeah.
Those of us who did that, it was voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are a ton of other people who got on the plane with a shirt on their backs.
Yeah.
And they just
crossing the rivers.
Crossing the rivers, sleeping, on the roads and not even being they don't even know where they were going. They don't even know where they're going, what their next meal will be. So that is forced. And it's still ongoing because some of those leaders are just so greedy that it's so hard for them to take a step back and see what is happening to their people.
Yeah, that is so true. I know this topic, we can just continue going on and on and on. I think we should at least exhaust one of the topics on here, which is, I think is the marriage and relationships, because I know that's a big one. That one is probably going to take about 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Because we all face that in this country, coming here and then having to integrate into this system, having to work. We know that back home, we have like different roles. Things are a little bit different back home because for the most part, the man works and then the woman stays at home.
With nannies.
Yeah, with nannies. And that's the difference. I'm glad you said
that. And the driver.
And each child has a nanny.
Exactly. Because even though you have women who stay at home, for the most part, they're not staying at home because they have to cook, clean, they have help. They still have help. So that's the difference. When we come here, we don't have
Martha, I'm gonna emphasize on this. The point of correction, though, it is what the housewives that you're describing right now are the modern one, the millennials.
Exactly.
Our mothers.
Exactly.
Our mothers do not have the luxuries of having those nannies for each child.
Yes. And I'm comparing that now to the woman like us, a woman like us back home, the working woman, right?
The working woman. Okay.
Yes, the working woman back home.
Mothers who were working women did not have the luxury of having 5, 4, 3 nannies.
Yes.
They had
relatives who
they had relatives at home.
Exactly.
They had relatives at home who are helping.
Exactly. Like in my home, we always had people in the house. There was someone to help with something. You know, so here is different. So how do we even navigate that? Because now it has started affecting our marriages. It's affecting our relationships because our men, they are not used to this system. You know, so who is even to blame? Can we even blame someone? Because they were brought up in a different way. Most men back home are brought up a little bit different. The woman is brought up, you know, they prepare her for marriage, basically, you know. So it's kind of like the woman's
that question is really broad because it depends on certain circumstances. Because, for instance, my husband and I were married before we came here, and I can tell you our dynamic has not changed much. If it has changed, it's for the better, right? Because we were young millennials who got married before moving here. So whatever we didn't get to the point where we had a nanny or a maid or anything like that. But that versus if we got married 20 years ago and stayed back home and then just moved here now, that would be a totally different dynamic. So we literally, our marriage grew up here. So I say that to say that question will have a lot of different answers depending on the circumstance or the situation. Let's flip that and say my uncle, who is in his 60s, moved here 5 years ago with his wife. He will be shocked.
Yeah.
Because now his wife will not serve him dinner every evening because she might be working evening shift. I'll tell you something really funny. My mom, she should be an actress. One day when she first came, when she came to the US for the first time, and I was in nursing school working weekend nights as a CNA. And one Friday evening, I was leaving for work. He called my husband and said, "My son, I don't understand this dynamic. Why do you stay at home? You sleep in your bed at night and my daughter goes to work. Shouldn't it be the other way around?" I went to work late that evening because we had to sit down and level set on that question because that question was deep. My mom was coming from a place where men are the ones who fended for the family. She didn't understand that even if I had to work, I should be working a night shift and not, instead of me working night shift, my husband should be the one doing that because she knows that that's a difficult thing for a woman to do according to her own understanding. But we had to explain to her, say, "Hey, Mama, the type of work my husband does, there's no night shift. And in order for us to accommodate my schooling and also bringing a little bit of money to support the family, I have to do this work. If I do it during the day, there will be no one to take care of the children. And we didn't want to send the kids to the daycare. So we sat down and arranged it to be like that. So it's not that my husband doesn't want me to chill." Another thing she brought up, she said, "Where's my husband's dish? Like the dish that I'm going to do."
That part.
That one must be Papa's plate.
Exactly.
You don't set the table for your husband. I'm like, "Mama, please, we already have a dynamic. Just watch the TV that you have been presented with." So
that part.
Those are just some of the little things. I'm not saying this to say that millennial couples may not be having challenges, but I'm just saying it's going to depend case by case.
Yeah.
Because everyone was brought up differently. Some people got married back home before they moved here. So they lived a different marriage lifestyle back home before they moved to the Western world. Some people grew up, saw their parents, how they dealt with domestic chores, saw how their parents did that, and now they're here. They may be expecting that from their spouses whom they met here, forgetting that we are under different circumstances. And instead of trying to sit at the table and say, "Hey, this is how we know this thing, but we know it's not going to work in this situation. How can we make it work for us based on our current situation?" And that's where Auntie comes in because she can guide.
Yeah.
I
totally
agree. And you need help. We have a coach in the house.
Yeah. So I think each person, I was going to say, let each person share their challenges and just say how they are able to navigate it in their homes, because our role here is to try to keep people in their marriages and in their relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the divorce rate amongst Africans right now is skyrocketing because people can't take it. The road changes. Some people cannot tolerate it. So let's kind of share our challenges and how people can better navigate these challenges.
I'll go because I was speaking, Auntie. Let me finish my thought process. So just to answer that part of the question, I have had challenges, but I found that most of my challenges were my expectations that were not being communicated. I'll give you an example. We have 3 kids. And after nursing school and sitting at the library till 8 p.m., 9 p.m., my husband will call, babe, I'm at the store. Where are the diapers? I'm like, I don't work at that store. Go to the people and ask them where the diaper aisle is. Or at home, like after 3 kids, you don't know where we keep the diapers at home. So little things like that. Now, I would lash out at him, but that was not really the thing that was causing me to lash out. It was because I was exhausted. Exhausted from working 3 nights every weekend, exhausted from dropping kids at preschools and picking them 3 hours later and not getting enough sleep, and having to attend an 8-hour class every day and staying at the library 3 to 4 hours to study before I go home and clean and cook and do all those things.
Yeah.
So at a point, I had to, my little girl would tell me, Mom, you're yelling for no reason. And I had to catch myself. That's when I said, oh, this thing is getting out of hand. It's not them. It's not the kids. I understand that toddlers can make you go out of your mind sometimes. But I sat back with myself and realized that a lot of the things that were causing me to be frustrated was coming from the inside. And there was no way for me to control what was going on at that stage in our lives, but I could control how I responded to it. Which was, I don't have to yell to send a message. I could tell my husband, hey, babe, you always ask me about these things. This is where they are. This is where they are. When you ask me and I'm frustrated and I'm tired, I tend to lash out. Please, can you remember it next time? Maybe write it down or something. So we don't have to call about nonsense things that would just increase my stress. At a point, I thought I had migraines. It was never migraines. It was just exhaustion. And then another thing I realized is, even after finishing school, I noticed that I was so tuned into house chores, keeping the house in order and doing all these things, making sure the kids are right and forgetting myself. And one day my husband said to me, babe, we've been living as brothers and sisters. Or brother and sister, what's going on? You're always busy. Even now that you're not in school anymore. And I had to sit back and ask myself, like, some of these things, like, I don't have to clean. I can work an extra 4-hour shift and pay someone else less to clean the house. To come every Saturday and do the kids' laundry and start teaching the kids how to do their own laundry, or even seek counseling if it gets to that point. But I say that to say a lot of the things that lead to issues in marriages as immigrants, one is comparing back home, how women do back home and here, or the place of a woman from 1950, and they forget that it's 2025. And forgetting that they cannot keep me at home and pay me the salary that I make, but expect me to be that woman. Like, until we can face reality and say we are in a different space where we are getting a different experience out of the situation, and we need to make things work based on what we are experiencing, and communicate. And also
communication is a big thing.
Sit with ourselves and be real and say, this is not because this person wants this or that. It's just because of how I am coming out to them based on and we have a lot of secrets. That's another thing. Auntie said something earlier. We are taught to look down when we speak to our elders and people in positions of power and all those little stigmas. We are not raised to speak up or share with you, Martha, what I'm going through, just to talk to someone. Talk less of going to pay a therapist or a counselor for what? I saw a post.
They think they're crazy. They say you're crazy when you seek help. That's what they call you.
I saw a post that made me laugh. The post said, instead of going to therapy, to marriage counseling, take that money and go on vacation. I was like, people will say, take the money and go on vacation and rest. You're just stressed. But on a serious note, we need to seek help when it's getting out of hand. We need to know that it's okay to seek help, because if we keep comparing ourselves to our parents, my mom was a full-time wife. All she needed to do was keep the house clean, get pregnant every 2 to 3 years, have however many children she ended up having, and however many miscarriages and stillbirth, and she just kept going until the doctor told her it's not healthy for you to keep having children, and that's when she stopped.
Now, and those kids were raised by the community. Is the community.
Exactly. Yes. The kids were raised by the community. She didn't have to worry. Like when I was 3, she didn't worry where I were when she went to the farm, right? But nowadays it's not the same. So it would be it would be naive to compare those situations and say, oh, our parents did this is how it should be. Some things that I learned from my kids sometimes, Mom, your experiences are valid, they just don't apply to these times. And that's true. And we can modify them and find a way to integrate them into what we want, but we cannot copy and paste. That time don't pass. Sorry,
Thank you for that, Josie. So, Auntie, let's have you go.
Well said, Josephine. I don't know if I can catch up to you though. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just to share some of the challenges.
Okay, the marriages, right?
Yes, that you've gone through and how you've been able to deal with them in your relationship. And I know you and your husband are still going strong. So if you can share some of the advices on, what you guys have been doing. I know Josie shared hers here. That can help someone in the audience, know how to navigate.
Well, one of the things that I would say, especially when it comes to immigrant couples, is that adaptability is one of the first things that we want to embrace, right?
That's true.
When we get on that plane and fly thousands and thousands of miles over to another country, I don't care if it's the United States, I don't care if it's in Europe. When we make that, for those of us who made that decision, when we make that decision, we are saying to ourselves that we are going somewhere that is totally different from where we're coming from. That's totally different from what we know. And the least we can do is allow ourselves to be open, to embrace whatever that place that we have decided to go has for us. So adaptability is going to help a ton. Yeah. Getting ourselves assimilated. Assimilation. When we cherry pick the things that we want to embrace and let go of the ones that we feel like, oh, it's against my culture, or oh, my woman got to serve me hot dinner every night, and then we embrace the one that are in favor of us, we're not doing ourselves any good, or we're not doing our partner any good. Because what we're doing is we're picking what works for us and then letting go of what doesn't work for us and apply. That's when we bring our culture. That's when we apply our culture. That's when you see people start saying, oh, back home, this is how they do it back home. Back home, but those things that favors them, they don't side back home. They go head on and embrace them.
That's true.
Yeah. Most of the challenges that immigrant couples face, the one or two most important challenges that immigrant couples face is control and power.
Control and power, you got that right.
In the relationship.
Yes.
In the relationship is control and power.
They're trying to mimic from their parents back home, right? The fathers back home.
Control and power. Josephine used a good example with the mom asking the husband, how can you be sleeping and your wife is going to work at night? Right? That's a typical immigrant African family. Of course, the mom is supposed to be home and the father is going to be at work, right? The father has to be in control. So if you see a situation where it's the reverse, it's like, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh my son, that man, the woman, the controlling. I've heard it from so many relationships.
Yeah. Because the woman has a voice.
Because the man is allowing the wife to be present in their marriage.
Yeah.
The man is allowing the wife to be present. The man is welcoming the wife as a partner.
Yeah.
That right there is a whole topic. Power struggle in relationships. Yeah. That's a whole topic.
When the man welcomes the wife as a partner, it gets translated by some as that woman has wrapped that man around her finger. Everything that woman says, the man does it. The man is a man. Leave that man. That man is a weak man. So what happens? The people around that man, or the male friends, or the kafuyashi, whatever, they start making fun of this man who is trying to treat the wife as a partner,
as an equal. Yeah.
And what does that do? What does that do to this man? It crumbles his ego around his friends. What does he do to this man? His self-esteem starts to shrink. And what else does he do? Now he wants to prove to his friends that he's a man. The next thing you know, he starts trying to prove that he's a man to the wife by start acting up and doing things. That is now going against what he and his wife probably have arranged or agree on how their marriage is going to look like.
So true.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Nancy. Yeah.
So when we start finding ourselves in that pit hole, we start having that trouble. Because some of us are refusing to get acclimated. Some of us have decided that we're going to cherry pick some of the cultural or societal norms that comes with being a couple or being a husband or a wife. We cherry pick the ones that favors us, and those that do not, we throw them on the sideways. And we criticize those who do the latter or who do the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice is, when you find yourself in a relationship, start having those conversations off the bat. I've heard people say, oh, she smokes, but that's not a big deal. She's gonna stop. She'll stop after we get married. No. If that smoking bothers you, start talking about it now before you get married.
Yeah.
If he speaks to you in a certain way and you don't like it, don't think it will stop after you get married. Start addressing it now before you get married. The best time in any relationship is during the courting time, during the dating time. That's the most easiest.
Yeah.
Don't think you'll get better during the marriage than during your dating time. I was talking to my dermatologist yesterday. She's an African immigrant, and she told me a story. We were just talking and joking. She said, you know, Auntie, when my husband was dating me, so we're just talking about girl stuff. And she said, sometimes I go to the hair salon and I do my hair and I'm all, dressed really nice. I come home and my husband notice that my hair is done, my makeup. She said, can you believe it? How I made some men like this? I wear makeup, he doesn't even notice. So he said, when this man was dating me, he used to follow me to the beauty store and he would sit in the chair for 5 hours for me to get my hair braided. And everyone in the beauty store would be like, oh my goodness, you're so lucky. Look at your boyfriend. He's sitting here waiting for you for 5 hours. He said, my sister, after we said, yes, I do, I'm begging him to even drop me off at the store. And he's saying he doesn't have the time. I said, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a courting time. He was trying to court you. When they're trying to date you, they put their best foot in front. And when you say yes, it
Auntie breaking up. Okay.
what it was during dating.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you.
And communication is
it's a key.
And so they get different, not better.
Right.
It gets different. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. It gets the attention gets different, not better.
Not better. Yeah. I mean, we're going to continue to talk about this topic. That Diana should share hers, and then I'll share, and then
Diana,
we'll probably have to take some subtopics out of this, and maybe communication, and talk about that in a relationship. We'll talk about the power struggle, because as you all are talking, I'm just jotting down some points of big things that I know that we can exhaust in the future. So Diana, please share your struggles and how you've been able to overcome them, or if you're still overcoming, or how you even plan on overcoming, if you know how to.
Yeah. Thank you, Josie and Auntie. You guys, you really said it all. I mean, every single one of your points are very valid. I will say, adding on to what you said, comparison is the problem and adaptability is the solution. I mean, it's just that simple. I didn't really grow up in Cameroon, having anybody who I didn't have any marriage that I could look up to. Nobody was married. None of my aunties were married. My mom wasn't married to my dad, so I didn't really know what a marriage was like going back home. But when I came here, I lived with family and I got to see the difference between the family members who had African boyfriends or partners versus the ones who had American partners, and it was as clear as day and night. The African partners, for the most part, still expected the woman to go to work, come back, cook, literally serve the table, clean, do it all, and all he did was work. And his comparison was, well, that's what the women back home did. Like, they're supposed to cook and clean and feed me. So he didn't add onto the fact that they had to work, right? And so they're doing 2 jobs now instead of just the one job that their moms or whoever they're looking up to did. And then I also got to experience the family members that were in relationships or married to Americans, and specifically whites. I know it was just so amazing how, you know, the white husband will wake up and he will clean, he will cook for her, he will massage her feet. And I was like, whoa, what is this? What is this? You know? And so it just goes to show. And even another example is one family member of mine who was telling me about how they literally decided not to have any more kids because it was ridiculous. The husband expected her to do it all. And even when it came to the kid, he wouldn't even like help even at night. So she works, she comes back, she cooks, she cleans, she takes care of the kid. The kid is crying at night. She's the one waking up, and all he does is just sleeping and tapping her like, wake up and go. Don't you hear your baby crying? And so she was so upset, like, what? I don't have to deal with this. I'm not having no more kids for you. If this is what it is, I'm not having any more kids for you. And so I would just say that personally, I try to adapt that. I try not to compare because I know that we still, no matter what, we're still African. So there's certain things that we're going to always have to do it differently. You can't compare yourself to a culture that you know that you're not part of. You know, we live here, but this is not our culture. And so I try not to compare because I know when I do, I get really upset. I'm like, there's certain things that I just feel like, you know, the man should do. And I feel like, you know, you're not doing it. And so I take a step back. I'm like, you know what? Comparing is not the key. The key is let's communicate about it. Let's talk about it. I feel like maybe you can help me a little bit in this department. You know, we're both working class people. You know, can we share the responsibilities? You know, can you help cook sometimes? And, you know, can you help out with the kid? And so it's really just trying. Like Josie and Auntie said, do not compare, and definitely try to adapt and assimilate certain things, because if not, I mean, the divorce is coming. It's definitely coming. And we don't want that.
Yeah.
Don't want that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Dinah. I mean, I've been through my own things, and to me, I'm remarried. And for those of you who know me, you know, I was married to a Caucasian before, and in that relationship, I still was not satisfied or fulfilled. I still kind of felt like, oh, this is so different. So, you know, to him, it was just me, you, and our daughter. And it's like, oh, just go to the mall. Why don't you just go have fun? You know, he had all the money, and he was like,
Martha doesn't know how to have fun.
yeah, so just go have fun. So to him, having fun was taking our daughter to the mall, go do little shopping, do your little things, and it's just so it's more of the internal family. And I'm sitting over here like, dude, I got family back home that I got to take care of. Like, what do you mean I should just sit here? Like, I just could not see myself just being that. So I still kind of miss my culture. Like coming here, I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss my friends. I miss the things I used to do back home, you know. But he was the one doing everything. And those are the role differences that we have here, because even when I want to cook, he's like, oh no, I'll cook. And then like he enjoyed the cooking. He enjoyed it. He was like, I want to do when he
My
cooks.
sister likes soft life.
When he cooks with so much joy, even though the food may not taste good, but you like, you know what, you're gonna eat that food no matter how much it tastes. And when I cook my food, it's like, oh my God, what is that smell? So I was like, I could not cook the stuff that I wanted to cook. So I was like, you know what, you go on ahead. And it's just like that. A lot of things in the house he took care of that I didn't have to. But I will feel guilty because even if I wash clothes, it's like, oh no, I like the clothes washed in a certain way. So it's like, oh, well, carry on. So, but I missed that part of, you know, being African and my Africanness. I was like, I need to find me a brother, you know.
So can I ask you a question in regards to that matter, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
It goes back to what I was saying earlier about communication, right? I hear you say that at the end of the day, as much as your ex-husband did all these things for you, and you know, you were flattered, cooking and all that,
Mm-hmm.
you still felt like something. You needed a brother, you had family and all that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, when you guys were dating, did you open him to this side of you? Did you open him to this African side? Because maybe if he was open to this African side, he probably would have joined you in the African side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just curious.
Well, that never happened because, again, you know, when you get in a relationship, it's
that's where I'm coming from with this. I thought so. That's where I'm coming from with this, because as soon as you said it, I'm like, okay,
But Auntie, this is the thing. When people want to change, they'll change. You can take a horse to a stream, but you will not force it to drink water. Because even though those things may not have been addressed in the beginning, in the relationship, if he wanted to change, he would have changed. A lot of times when you see a lot of these relationships, they work out is because people are open-minded. When people are open-minded, they want to explore, they want to do different things. And okay, But when you have someone who's a little bit close-minded, it's difficult, right? No matter how much you say, because in the relationship, I was expressing like, hey, I need to send money to my mom. It's like, why are you sending money to your mom? They're supposed to be taking care of you. Why are you So those are the cultural differences, right? That we talk about, that they're not used to that. They're used to their parents giving them money. Their parents gave, at the age of 18, his parents gave him money. He bought a brand new home, paid for. So they gave him a car, everything. So when I even talked about having a credit card, he's like, oh my, why would you want a credit card? Buying a car with credit, why would you want to do that? So these are people, that's how they were raised, but they don't know how other people were raised. So to come to say that you have that barrier, when I did get with, Cameroonian, then I was like, oh, now the things have changed. So it's like, it's a little bit different. So I was trying to do some comparisons too, but it didn't work out because you can't really blame someone based on culture, how they were raised. But I still enjoyed that part of having to cook because like I'd not cooked for a while. I was like, oh, let me cook, so I can enjoy my meal with my husband. But then when it came to the part that you're like, oh, you're cooking, like, okay, well, when are you going to get in the kitchen to cook? So there are things like that. But we have grown because now I think what I've learned is that you can only do but so much. There are those responsibilities that we have, especially us and African women, that we still feel like we have to do. But you have to know your limit. If you can't cook, you can't cook. If you can clean, you can clean. Right now, I do get people to come clean the house. I'm like, when I have to calculate my time, I said, my time is money. So if I have to spend time cleaning my house, that may cost me $400 or $500 to clean my house, right? Then I think about it, I said, well, if I was working, how much money will I make? So that time that I would have been cleaning the house, if I was working, I would make more money. So why not just share that money and give someone else to clean the house? So that's the way we have to start looking at it, an expert. So, but most people don't do this. Most people, they will work. They come back, they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot, my husband will not even allow me to do that, to have to get someone to come clean the house. So it gets to a point where you have to start thinking about these things, like communicating. Your husband, communicate with your partner to say, this is how it is. I'm not able to fulfill these roles. I will have to get someone to do it. Or there are times that maybe I may just stubbornly do it because at that time I'm thinking about my mental health. Like by the time I clean this house, I'm tired. Most of the time on weekends, I want to relax on the weekends. But then on weekends, I realize that I'm even more tired. I'm like, where did the weekend go? It just came and it's gone. I'm even more tired on the weekend than, during the week. So those are the things that we really need to start looking into to see how do we prioritize our mental health? Because if you keep giving, you're not going to have any left for you to be able to give. You had mentioned, who mentioned, was it Josie? You mentioned the power, was the control and power. No, Auntie, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I feel like it's really killing most of our relationships.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Most of our parents back home had a lot of control, especially our dads, right? So you have our husbands who grew up in these homes where the dad was the superpower. They control everything. My dad was one of those, as you say, papa pandi. Yeah, they have to have papa's table, papa's pan, papa's this, papa's that. Even when my mom came here, we talk about roles of mothers, and I had cooked, and when my husband came back, she came upstairs and said, hey, your husband is back. You're going to serve him some food? I said, Mom, I cooked. My husband knows where the food is. He can serve himself. So that's not how it works over here. But that's just how she was raised, and the way our parent or the father figures are so in control and have so much power, they can yell over the wives, they can talk. Sometimes they even talk, the woman wants to talk to, like, oh, why are you talking? Men are talking. So a lot of times they come up with that mentality. When they come here now in this country, you and your wife are here, and the woman is like, here, the woman has more power than back home. Because a lot of times back home, women don't have the type of power that's given here.
Martha, can I comment to that? I don't feel like women have more power here than back home, because if you were in your position and capacity as you are here in Cameroon, I would say you have more power in Cameroon than here, because you will not have to deal with any domestic issues with regards to chores and who takes the kid to school, all you probably did was go to work, come back, make sure the maids did what they were supposed to do, go to parent-teacher meetings, stuff like that, more so than here. Sometimes when people compare that, they're basing it off of their own experiences, but generalizing it, because that doesn't apply to every situation. I know some very powerful women back home.
Oh yeah, right? That is true. That is true.
Can I say that's a pro?
Let me finish that point though, because when I say even power, right, I'm even mean as far as even the laws, right? Like the laws over here protect the woman. That you can have an opinion and you can say things, and you have a law that protects you. Because one thing that I have heard is that, okay, we're in America now. You have these couples who say when the woman wants to do something, well, it's because we are in America now. So you think you can talk, you think you can do this. But
I think that's overgeneralization, because an empowered woman is empowered wherever they are in the world.
My family, I have very empowered women, but they still were empowered in their own way. They still were empowered. Their husbands were still able to bring all kinds of concubines around them, marry 3, 4 wives in their empowerment. So those are things that, those are things that would not happen here, right? So the man can go but as far, because here the law is the law. You still have people up to nowadays who are still physically abusing their wives. They can do that back home. They can maybe get away with it. But over here, you cannot get away with it. If the woman decides that she's going to maybe pursue some kind of, but most men, they will try not to do that. I think that's where I even come from when it comes to the power, because the law protects the woman. Yes. But then,
because in that regard, when it comes to abusive relationships and stuff, the law, there are laws here that will protect the woman more so than back.
Yes, because like most of my sisters were powerful women, just like Diana was saying, didn't go around, didn't get married to like, okay, they were in a relationship, and then you have like, okay, I'm not going to be in this relationship, or they decide to leave. And sometimes these women may even stay in that relationship because you probably leave, they maybe take your kids away from you. And you don't even have the power to even deal with that. So when it comes to that regard, it's still it. But I'm saying that for the most part, when the men come here, some of them still have that mentality. They still want to like talk and yell at their wives, or they still feel like they still have control over you and you can't have a voice. So that brings a lot of struggle in those relationships, because the woman is like, the women are now talking back. Like, you can't just talk to me this way.
And if I may interject, that's why you have the divorce rate with the immigrant community skyrocketing, because the men are bringing that intentionally.
Yeah.
They know they know the society that they're living in. They know the culture that they're
living in. It may not be intentional though, because when the way you were raised shapes who you become in the future.
They know the difference. They know the difference. Now, once again, I'm always gonna take us back to that plane ride. Mm-hmm. When we get on that plane and travel thousands of kilometers, thousands and thousands to come over here, mm-hmm. right? We get into the assimilation process. We get to follow the rules. We get to go to work on time. We get to do things a certain way. We mm-hmm. get to understand how the society works. Mm-hmm. We now cherry pick when it comes to our personal lives. We now cherry pick those norms, those things that we want to embrace, and those that we do not. Mm-hmm. So it's by choice.
Yeah, most of them don't want to change.
There you go.
They don't want to change. And now you get the modern polygamy that's happening, because guess what some of the men are doing? They're going back home. They're saying they want to go back home. They go back home, they marry another woman, and they still have another woman sitting here in the United States.
So it's by choice, right? Because it's not like they don't know. They're ignorant about how the society works. No, mm-hmm. They live in the society. They're abiding to the terms and social norms of the society. They're doing that in every other aspects of their lives. And then when it comes to this particular aspect, they say, no. I'm going to do it my way, because where I come from, this is how we do it. Why don't you tell your boss that where you come from, people go to work at 10 a.m. so you can show up at 10 a.m.
Exactly. And take a break and go to the bar.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell your boss that?
Yeah. And I mean, I think this all just goes to say that, we have to compromise, right? When we come here, things are different. They're not like it is back home. So a lot of the couples and some of these men would think that they can still bring the African mentality here. It's just not working in their favor. And it's not to say that we're not blaming anybody, right? These are just things that we are all facing. So as we're facing these things, we need to start talking about them. And we're going to continue exhausting this topic because there's so many other things that come behind this. But at the end of the day, we do not want to separate families, because us Africans, we hold families dear to heart. We know most immigrants do too. So it's really having to communicate, right? And be flexible in your relationships. Be able to listen to each other, look at the concerns, be able to help each other, because it's hard in this country. It's really hard. And if the roles are left for just one partner to have to deal with the responsibilities, it becomes tough. And most of our men are really trying. They are trying. They're stepping in now. Yeah. They're getting in the kitchens. They're helping. They're helping with the kids, because they understand.
They're changing diapers.
Right. They're doing all that. So, I mean, kudos to our men who are doing that. And we're hoping that other men who are not, they can follow suit, because even if you run and go back home, you run and go wherever, you're still not going
Same
to find that
wahala,
happiness.
different place.
Exactly. Same
Yeah.
wahala. Thank you. So it's really to find those ways. And how can we support each other in this process, right? We have to keep looking for different ways. So we're probably going to bring this topic back at some point and talk a little bit more, to be more specific. I know today we kind of we're all over the place, but we can kind of be a little bit more specific. But I'm hoping that this helps someone, anybody who's listening. And we're hoping to continue with these recordings. There's so many topics that we would have wanted to cover today, but we're not able to. So we'll continue talking. So hopefully we can get others to join us in the conversations. But it's also.
Can I say something real quick about the whole marriage thing? Because I just want to be fair that this is not about bashing immigrant men or African men. This is
no,
about
we're not
talking
bashing
about
anybody.
This
right?
is us talking about why the divorce rate is high, and there are some situations where our African sisters are just butchering the situation. They are not making it better. And in this where we are in this day and age, my best advice is have a conversation. Talk about your strengths and your weaknesses. Each one of us have. Hone onto your weakness and your strength. Pick whatever you're good at in a relationship and let your partner pick whatever or choose whatever they're good at. And when you guys come together, you guys will create a great partnership.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that. Something came to mind when you were saying that. So we have some grandmothers in the community. One of them has hearing loss. The other one has vision loss. And they were telling their stories. It was so fascinating. The one who could see, when they're watching TV, when they're hanging out and watching TV, the one who could see can tell the other person what's going on. And the one who could hear would tell the other person what's going on. So that came to mind because it helps each other pick up the slack from the other person, right?
Yeah.
We are in this together. For all those who are married out there, we are saying this to find solutions to keep our marriages together. As Auntie said, we are not badging at some of the people who are not doing what they needed to be doing or should be doing, but we're just trying to pull out some things that we are struggling with in the community and saying that it's okay to seek help for your mental health. One thing I would say to those of you who are out there who are still dating is communicate with your partner. I know a lot of times that's not what goes through your mind when you're dating. You just want to be in love. But if you do not communicate what your expectations are, if you do not tell your partner what you expect in a husband, or if you do not at least know what you would expect in a husband before you start dating, then you're setting yourself up for failure. I read a book as a married woman. I read a book and the title is The Power of Singleness or something to that effect. But it helps to know who you are, who you want to become, what you would want in another person, and become that first before expecting other people to live up to that. Because a lot of times people just want others to do all these things and be all these things when they themselves are not putting in any effort to try and become the person they want to see in the other person. My niece used to tell me she want to get married to a doctor, she want to be rich, get married rich. I'm like, you're broke. You're never going to attract a rich person, right? What are the chances? So you have to first work on yourself, bring yourself up to a certain standard so that you can be able to position yourself in places where you will find those type of things. It goes the same with knowing what you want in a potential husband before you even start dating, and knowing that it's okay to have these conversations and discuss these things so that in the future you can say, hey, we said we were going to have 3 kids. Why are you wanting another one? You can say, hey, we said we're going to have our wedding at this location. Why is it changing now? That will start showing you yellow flags and red flags to tell you that, okay, maybe 3 years ago when you started dating, this person was pretending. And don't get stuck in a hole and tell yourself that I've invested 5 years of my life with this person. If you see red flags at 5-year mark, it's okay to withdraw and not engage in a lifetime partnership, which is just going to turn around and be a statistic. But there's more to come. Stay tuned.
Thank you for that, Josie. And we'll have Dinah, if you want to give any word of conclusion, you can, and then I will just ask all of you where people can find you.
No, I think that lovely ladies, you guys all said it all. There's so many components to this, but at the end of the day, we just have to work together, not compare, adapt, and communicate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So communication is the big thing. Communicate. So, and seek help, please. Seek help. I know most of our immigrant communities, we don't seek help. We don't seek counseling. We see counseling as something that's for the birds, but like Josie said, someone said go on vacation rather than seeking counseling. When you go on vacation, you come back, those problems are still going to be there. So counseling is something that has to be continuous. Even if it's premarital, do some premarital counseling. Get to know your partner, because that is something that we don't never get to know. A lot of times it's even hookup. So you just meet someone, you jump in a relationship. We're always so quick. We want to get married, it's the butterflies. But then the quickly you jump into that marriage, it's only going to be the quicker you'll be trying to get out too. So it's best to invest the time and get to know each other, know what their weaknesses are before you say, hey, do I want to engage, in this? Because you can still see somebody's weaknesses, because we all got one. No one is perfect, right? But then there's some weaknesses that you will determine if that's a burden that you can carry. If it's a burden that you cannot carry, don't force yourself into it. Because you see people spending thousands and thousands of dollars to do these fancy weddings, and a week or two later, the marriage is over. So let's be proactive rather than reactive. So ladies, thank you so much for joining in tonight. This conversation was lovely. The first one was lovely as well. We're going to continue. And we know we're going to be joined by so many other people who want to share their stories. And we do encourage each and everyone to share their stories, because we learn from these stories, right? Our stories may have touched somebody. So if you have a story you want to share, hey, please come on and share those stories with us. So Antoinette, I'll go with you. Just tell us where people can find you. I know at the beginning we really didn't get to introduce ourselves, but tell us what you do and tell us where people can find you, and we will drop the links below, so people are able to either follow you on social media or seek your services if they do need you.
Yeah, so I'm a certified life and grief coach and a spiritual companion. My social media handle is @TLifeCoaching, @T as in Tom, Life Coaching. Drop a comment, leave a message, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you, Antoinette. Diana, would you like to go?
Yes, I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I work for Relaxed Mind Wellness Clinic, where we provide holistic mental health care that focuses on combining therapy, medication management, as well as weight management, and empowering you to make lifestyle changes that will eventually lead to a better mental health. And then also I see patients telehealth in Virginia, Texas, North Carolina, as well as New York. And I also see patients well late into the evening. So like my working class people, you can see me at 10 p.m. The clinic is open. So she's going to drop the link to my website for anybody who's interested. So if you're dealing with mental health, or somebody who's dealing with any mental health crisis, depression, anxiety, and the list goes on, do not hesitate. Seek help. It doesn't have to be me. Whoever is in your state that's licensed, seek help and get the treatment that you deserve.
Okay, thank you, Diana. So we'll drop a link below, so anyone can just go on that link to find any one of the speakers. So Josie.
Hey guys, yes, I'm Josie Ofongo on all social media platforms. So you can look it up or type it up, Google it. She's going to drop the link here. If you type Ojong Fongo anywhere in any search engine, I will be the only one who
You will pop up. You will be all over.
I will be the only one who pops up, and I'm here. I am a cheerleader for personal development and self-care and mental wellness. So I am a nurse practitioner by trade, but I'm passionate about supporting each other and coaching each other to be their best self.
Thank you, Josie. And I am your host, Martha Eseh. So Eseh, yes, a lot of people will pronounce my name. There are all kinds of pronunciations on my name. So the good thing is that we all have unique names there. So you can find me on social media with the name Martha Eseh. I'm also on all the social media platforms. The name of my business is Headspace and Wellness Clinic. I'm located in Clemens. I have a physical location in Clemens. I also see patients in Virginia and the Washington, D.C. area. I do provide mental health services as well. As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, I diagnose, I treat, and I provide psychotherapy and also weight management as well. Like we said, your mental health is your physical wealth, okay? Just like you're taking that medication for your blood pressure, you also need to seek help for your mental health, because if you're not good up there, you cannot do anything else. Your head has to be in a good space for you to be able to function physically, because most people do not realize how much their mental health affects their physical health. Because once you start having those headaches, you can't get out of bed, you're feeling tired, you're weak, you're exhausted. That's because your mental health is not in a good place. So please do not shy to seek help. Help is always available. And with all these ladies here, you can reach out to one of us, or you can reach out to anybody else. Like Diana said, it doesn't have to be us. We just want you to seek the help that you do deserve. And together we will help end the stigma on mental health. There's a lot of stigma on mental, especially in our communities. So please continue to stay tuned with us, continue to follow us on social media. We are going to continuously bring interesting topics. We are going to debunk all those myths. There's so many myths when it comes to the African culture, or some immigrants too, or just here in America when it comes to mental health. So we will bring you expert knowledge. That way you are well informed and you're well educated, so you can take control of your mental health. Thank you, ladies. Next week we will continue to expand on these topics that we have, and we'll put a link below on the topic that we'll be discussing next week. And I think our goal is to have episodes every week. That way you have something that is entertaining, something that you can relate to. Thank you all, ladies, and I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.